This week, Matt Alderman will join me as a co-host this week of the show, which I'm very excited about. Matt's got some interesting announcements, which I will wait until later to reveal, to keep everyone guessing. Marci McCarthy, the CEO and President of T.E.N, will be with us. She has over 20 years of management and entrepreneurial experience. Then we're going to do some news. And in the news, we've got updates from several different companies. Actually, not a whole lot in the news. We've got White Hat, BitGlass, and some interesting take on VMware NSX platform. Then we're going to talk container security. We're going to talk more about the Twistlock announcement that we talked about last week and talk about some other interesting things as they relate to container security. All that and more on to this edition of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. The teleprompter now has artificial intelligence, Doug, and updates itself. It's awesome. This week, and talk about them as it relates to enterprise security. You're going to do great.
I think that people think that you and I talk like every day at night. It's like, hey, what are you doing? It's kind of a bit of an exhausting week. And I think that we noticed that a little bit in the stories for this week as well.
Minerva Labs stops malware that traditional antivirus solutions cannot block. Minerva works with your existing anti-malware tools to stop evasive threats by deceiving them into a dormant state, dramatically increasing your rate of prevention. Minerva's solution does not require ongoing care and feeding and will not get in the way of business users. With Minerva, adversaries have to pick their poison, implement evasive tactics and get caught by Minerva, or don't employ evasion and get stopped by AV. To learn more and request a demo, visit minerva-labs.com today. Are you worried about PCI compliance? Does your development team understand or care about security? Are you ready to face a breach of your customer sensitive data? See the worst that can happen before it does. Black Hills Information Security can help you help management see the future. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a web application penetration test can mitigate the risk before you go live. Welcome, everyone, to episode 75 of Enterprise Security Weekly for January 10th, 2018. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian. Very, very happy to be here, as always. We're on not the regular set that we're planning to do this show on, as we're still doing some construction here in the studio, but I promise you we're actually going to have the bar in the background of one of the sets. It's going to be really nice. So we're using, this is normally the Secure Digital Life set, so we're just borrowing it for this show. Want to bring on our co-host for today on the lines via Skype. Mr. Matt Alderman is here. Matt, welcome.
Happy New Year, Paul.
And it's I always love having Matt on because Matt is, unbeknownst to him, one of the brainchilds of Enterprise Security Weekly. Of course, now we've disclosed that, but so it's nice to have Matt on. Who hopefully will be making more regular appearances on the show this year, which is great. As John is, I think, got kid stuff, parent-teacher conferences, and the like today. So, Matt, it's great to have you, as always. How you been?
Oh, good. Great end of last year. Pretty crazy up until the end. A nice little vacay in Mexico over Christmas. Now it's time to get back to work.
There you go. And work means you have a job that we'll talk about. Are we ready to talk about that yet?
We'll talk about that.
Okay,
No, we'll do it later.
Okay, we'll talk about it later.
We'll hold some people in suspense for a bit.
There you go. I want to mention to our audience that we've got several webcasts on demand on securityweekly.com/on-demand. It's a fantastic thing to do if you want to go learn some awesome stuff, both from our hosts as well as some of our hand-picked sponsors. So there's some webcasts there that you can watch from Cybereason, Onapsis, and others, and get some great information. All you can do is go there, register for the webcast, and there's a facility to ask questions. If you have questions, they get emailed to us, and we will answer them to the best of our abilities. So that's awesome. Make sure you go there, securityweekly.com/on-demand. Marci McCarthy is joining us today for our feature interview, and she is currently the CEO and President of T.E.N. Marci, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me today.
Marci, if you could describe for our listeners some of your background and how you came to be the CEO of T.E.N. and exactly what your role is there today.
Well, I'm the CEO and president of T.E.N. as well as the company's founder. I got involved in the information security industry back in 2001 when it was kind of a baby, and really was fascinated by the whole industry, the evolution of the industry, and where I was the director of product marketing for SecureWorks, and that was a startup at the time. And then I went to go work for Lanecope. But what I saw was the security executive at the time did not have a lot of opportunity for visibility or recognition, much less there was an understanding for security executives and why there even was a place for them in the organization. Most people felt that they were the guys and mostly guys that said no and slowed my computer down and kind of were the pains in the butts in the organization. But fast forward, what we created was a recognition and visibility program known as the ISE Awards, hosted in Georgia for the very first time in March of 2003 at the fabulous Fox Theater. And then fast forward, here we are today. We showcase and honor security executives and project teams on a North America basis. We have 5 ISE programs per year. 4 of them are regional. We have ISE Southeast coming up, for example, on March 6th here in Atlanta. And we also host ISE private dinners in 42 different cities across the U.S., bringing together security executives with solution providers for face-to-face marketing events. And we love what we do. I love what we do. And I wake up every single morning just excited about the whole industry and bringing together security executives and professionals.
So, Marci, it sounds like you're highlighting executives in security that are doing some pretty amazing things. Is that correct?
Well, security executives in general do some pretty amazing things, but quite frankly, a lot of people can't talk about it. What we've been able to do is really overcome that barrier and bring into the forefront of the great things that security executives and their project teams are doing in major corporations, the federal government, as well as, higher ed, and really bring an opportunity for that visibility to connect, collaborate, and celebrate and help pay it forward, because security is a journey. It's an ever-going process, and it's not something that really we can solve individually, but we really need to solve collectively. And I always say the best day is when nothing happens. And in the world of cybersecurity today, that is never the case. But again, we're trying to bring in the forefront the positive nature of the security executive and professionals and their project teams and highlight the good work that they're doing so that others can learn from those projects and endeavors and the leadership so that we can replicate that across the enterprise.
Marci, what are some of the things that we can talk about in terms of amazing things that are happening today in security in this light?
Well, really, there's a lot of innovation going on. You are seeing a lot of trends around cloud security. Actually, we just did a whole survey over the last year, and our whole team collaborated. And we're seeing a top-of-mind concern being, like I said, cloud security. We're also seeing a real hot spot for vendor risk management, because you really got to understand who you're doing business with and how you're collectively going to engage with them. And the security organization is critical to that. We're also seeing a resurgence in DLP with a lot of the advanced technologies out there that, like a Red Owl that was bought by ForcePoint, for example, and Vontu, which is, legacy to Symantec and the like. We're seeing a resurgence in interest in that because a lot of the insider threat is very, very complex and very real challenge for companies, especially the amount of data that they're managing. We're also seeing application security and web application security, with the world being the endpoint and mobility, the opportunity for hackers to really penetrate the smartphones and the devices. It's really there. If the code isn't really tight, you have malware really quickly in some of those devices. We're also seeing a resurgence on identity management and access governance. With all these companies buying each other or integrating and upgrading their infrastructure and technologies, especially like in the healthcare arena, you're seeing a huge resurgence in that, as well as vulnerability management, because there's still many holes. The back door still could be slightly ajar, and that's the way hackers are getting in. So,
Marci, in surveying the folks that are part of your organization and security executives, what are some of their top challenges that they're identifying today?
Some of the top challenges is really kind of seeing through the clutter of a lot of the marketing messages that are out there. There's a lot of companies that say, hey, we do this, we do this. The messages sound the same. They're not getting heard. Some companies are better than others. There are a lot of point solutions. And I think that what they're challenged by is the number of different security organizations that are trying to knock on the front door, get through the phone tree that may or may not exist at some of these companies anymore. A lot of companies have eliminated their phone systems or through email or email marketing and the like. And that's the biggest challenge, is really kind of dealing with which partners they want to engage with that are a right fit for their organization.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that because, they want to kind of a more integrated ecosystem, and so they're not looking at point solutions? Or I'm curious how that kind of gets played out a little bit, right? Because you're right, there are a ton of security solutions out there, and what's the priorities? Are they still looking for point solutions? They looking for integrated solutions? They looking for vendor consolidation? I'm just curious what some of those trends look like right now.
I don't think necessarily the vendor consolidation is because, there's a lot of great acquisitions going on out there. But I think a lot of the security executives that I talk to are looking for the right solution that fits their environment. So, yeah, you're not going to upseat, let's say you are really primarily, let's say, a semantic shop, right? You're not going to completely rip absolutely everything out. Or you have ArcSight. You're not going to rip the whole thing out. Or Splunk. I mean, you've made such a significant investment into those solutions, and you can't go back to the board, 2 years later after spending millions of dollars to do these implementations to say, hey, I did it wrong. But what you're going to do is find the solutions that are augmenting, that are connected into those mainstays. So that's where those opportunities for those emerging companies that have really unique technology, like a deceptive technology, for example, or threat intelligence, that are really augmenting but hook into the existing type of technologies. I don't really hear over and over again that there's a prejudice for an emerging company, but there's so many different ones and how they behave in terms of sales tactics and marketing tactics. It is really a differentiator. So if you try to call the CEO and say your chief information security officer doesn't call me back, you're not going to really win any favors with the security team or the security executive. That's your decision maker. That's a right way to kind of have the door slammed in your face. But if you go build the process and build the relationships and understand it is a relationship, it's a trust type of oriented sale, then you're going to be extremely successful.
Yeah, how does the enterprise defender, people that are actually, the architects, analysts, engineers, how do security executives balance what they're hearing from their team about what solutions might be helpful and the external sources that they're hearing? Like, how does that come together for the successful security executives?
Well, a great security executive or security leader is going to listen to their team. First of all, they wouldn't be a part of your team. And much like at my company, if you wouldn't be working for my company if I didn't value the opinion of my team. And that is going to go across the board for a security executive that is hiring their team. Their teams are, quite frankly, are short in supply and short staffed. So they're really going to treasure the individuals that are part of their team and really listen to the advice and the insights that they have. You also need to really respect the expertise of your team because, quite frankly, a chief information security officer is not probably going to be a chief security architect or an architect type of individual, nor have that expertise. In my organization, for example, I don't know much about how to program our website or our app or anything like that. So I rely on my team and what they come back and tell me. But again, and that's what brings up another great point, is security companies. I am in a marketing role, right? I enhance a marketing and sales organization for a security solution provider. Over and over again, I hear I have to have the chief information security officer at our dinner. The reality is you may or may not get them. A company like Bank of America, which has hundreds of thousands of employees, and actually has many vice presidents of various types of security roles, right? They're very defined. You might be better suited having someone that at the VP or even director level attend your program, because they might really be the strongest influencer, because the task has been delegated to them to come back with the possible solutions that they're going to invite into the bake-off and test inside their organizations. And again, they're going to rely on their team to make the final decision. The one that pulls the trigger, is the chief information security officer paired with procurement and that part of the organization. But again, a good leader is always going to trust their team. I mean, that goes back to like military 101. If you don't trust your team supporting you, then you really have a crappy leader.
Yeah, it's interesting. I also meet with a lot of different security vendors, and some have different approaches, right? They want from the bottom up, from the top down, or, just one or the other. But what you're saying, Marci, I believe it's both, right? You have to
It's absolutely both.
And you have to get to that
Absolutely
technical
both.
audience as well as the leadership as well. And what you're saying, which I like, is a different aspect, is it may not be the C-level. It might be some other executive within that organization that might be the person you want to target.
Right. If that person has expertise and responsibility over the identity management program for their company or the insider threat program for their company, they're probably going to be the ones that select the tools and technologies that are going to be implemented and utilized at their company.
What's the some of the most annoying things that, from a sales and marketing perspective, security vendors are doing that annoys security executives today?
Well, I mentioned one is calling the CEO, right? Not a cool thing to do. Another one that we've often heard is the meeting notice that gets sent to the admin and them, and they don't really know what the meeting is all about, but it populates their calendar and it confuses the admin. All of a sudden there's a meeting blocked on there and they don't even know what it is until the meeting really is happening, and all of a sudden they get on a call and kind of hijacked. Again, not cool, doesn't work. You think you got the meeting, but you really don't even know why you're there, and you're probably going to end up never having a meeting again. You pull that bag of tricks on the company as well. You also, another one that I've seen, I'm trying to think, is the aggressive behavior. As the marketplace has been extremely competitive, I've just seen some very unprofessional, aggressive behavior out there. And the salesmanship it really does make a difference. You are building a relationship. These people are paid to be paranoid. They want to trust. They've got to earn your trust. And picking up the phone and demanding a meeting because you have an end of the quota that you haven't met isn't really going to guarantee a sale either. And then I would say lastly is understanding that the sales timeline does not probably meet your quota deadlines. These are large companies. The procurement process alone can take anywhere for 10 days up to 90, 120 days just to board you as a vendor. Okay, so that part it can take a lot of time, which can eat into, again, your timeline. And when you're going into a 6-figure and a 7-figure deal, and you haven't done business with the company before, again, there's going to be some due diligence that's going to take in place, because this executive is going to be having to probably go through an approval process of their own, possibly in front of a board of directors, and you might miss the timing. Again, the budgets are created well in advance. And again, it's the art of the timing, the art of the deal. I know that sounds very corny nowadays, but there is a lot of that out there. And really having the patience and the time, which doesn't always work for companies that have a hockey stick quota. But again, understanding that the relationship is the valuable entity and the end game is the relationship and the trust that is earned during the process. Behave badly, be very aggressive, be underhanded. You're just going to walk yourself out of a deal.
So Marci, so I want to reverse that for a second.
Sure.
Because you kind of talked about all the don'ts, which I think is great. But if you're a startup in this space, and there's a lot of us out there, right, in this space,
Sure.
what would you recommend on a way to get going, right? What are the right things to do, right? So take it kind of from the opposite perspective and give me a list of some of the things that you think would help startups, get traction, get into some of these accounts, educate technical buyers for influence? How would they run the process? I would love some of the recommendations from that perspective.
Well, first and foremost, it's really important to get a couple beta customers under your belt, right? So that are testing your technology so that you can learn what works and what doesn't work in the environment and use those success stories to catapult you forward. Security executives like to talk to each other, and they'll share all the things, good, bad, and ugly, are what's going on. So word of mouth and building up your reputation is tantamount to getting the doors open and people actually picking up the phone and calling you. One of the things that I always thought to be very useful about the participation in the ISE programs from the vendor perspective, it's an opportunity to nominate an executive and or customer with a project of the success that you've had together. There's nothing better than highlighting a case study of a winning situation and having a room full of 75, 100 plus security executives seeing what you did together and hearing it from the security executive or project team leader themselves. Because chances are those people sitting in the room probably have a similar challenge that they've got to solve. And rewind a little bit, all our judges that review the nominations and select the finalists and the winners review every single nomination form and read them and score them. Again, there's your case study. There's solving how somebody else did it. And it's probably a great company. We just did we did nominations, or we had a recognition for the ISC Southeast Award last year. We had Aflac, we had the Home Depot, all Macy's, all highlighting all the things that they did with different companies along the way and how they did it. And I can tell you that they have seen some ROI on the vendor side because of the showcasing opportunities that they have through our programs. The other thing I would make mention is the importance of relationship building. We specialize in face-to-face marketing events, so like the ISE private dinners, of course, the ISE programs, things like that. Sitting down and just having a normal conversation, not a PowerPoint presentation being directed towards you, is actually going to allow you to look and listen to what your prospect has to say. At RSA, on the Wednesday morning during that week, we'll have an ISE sales and marketing breakfast. I bring together a panel of chief information security officers from a variety of different backgrounds, geographies, and interest levels and priorities. And I run a whole session for sales and marketing professionals on the do's and don'ts of marketing. But I can definitely tell you what I've heard over and over again is the importance of your reputation, how you conduct yourself, because they do talk to each other. They really want to hear how you helped somebody else that they have respect for, and not, because you say your product's the best. They want to understand how your product's the best and what you did to get there to make that claim.
Marci, as an enterprise defender, I've been in various organizations, and I've been part of the process for vendor evaluation in various capacities. What, in your opinion, is the best dynamic between the technical team, the management, executive security management, and the vendor? Like, how do we make that process more fluid? Because I'm sure there's many of us listening today, they tune into this show because they want to know, well, what vendor should I be thinking of? Our audience wants to be part of that process. What tips do you have?
So absolutely. One of the things I learned early on going back to really my SecureWorks and my Lane Cope days, and we were emerging companies at the time, one of the early mistakes that we made, and this is often for a lot of emerging companies and even established, I would say probably more so for the emerging company, is really putting some guidelines and measurable metrics in place for your pilot. You have to put a time frame involved. You've got to define what your objectives are going to be, and then set it with that time frame is, did you meet those objectives and how did you perform? And having that measurable metrics and being able to articulate what that means is going to put some real parameters of like, okay, so you like the technology, it worked in your environment. What would you like to do next? Would you like to actually, do a small installation, moving it forward down the sales pipeline? But you're not going to really get in the door without a sandbox or a kind of pilot test but again, putting some hard parameters, some timelines, and the costs that are going to be associated with it. If there may be some, you might be doing it for free at an emerging company to get the logos, on your list of beta customers. But again, what it's going to cost potentially in the future.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I advise companies who would be the customers of security vendors, and largely what I find in just conversing with them is I help them identify questions, like what questions to ask, and that's partly what you're speaking about is have your goals and objectives, and once you develop those, all of a sudden questions start coming up, and I'm like, yeah, that's a question you want to ask everyone who you're evaluating, and it's extremely important. And now the vendor side can kind of prepare, like, here's how you evaluate this technology. How useful do you think is that for security vendors to come up with help for customers on evaluation of particular solutions?
Right. A part of the process is engaging, of course, both audiences. So having a set of goals and objectives for your technical team, how you're going to perform and how you integrate into the existing infrastructure. And again, I'm going to really stress, you're not going to rip out an existing infrastructure unless there's really an initiative that the technology is so outdated and legacy. It's going to be pretty rare that you're going to do a full rip and replace to replace it with something new that's possibly unproven. Okay, so having those realistic expectations, but then understanding what the business drivers are, why they even brought you to the table, and what problems you're going to solve overall, and then moving forward. Because again, you need both the technical blessing and the business side blessing to make that type of investment.
What sales and marketing strategies do you believe today, Marci, are really working for organizations? And we've seen a lot of models, and I think a lot of them are successful, but what seems to be emerging from at the top in terms of like newer styles of sales and marketing?
Well, I really don't think, one-way conversations work. So sometimes when you have a static webinar, although they might be doing some exploratory, I would encourage, if you're going to do that format for your marketing, for example, you're going to bring forth perhaps a customer so that you can engage in a case study or a showcase type of presentation. I'm in the marketing business that's really primarily face-to-face. I really think we have gotten so far removed sometimes from each other with social media and texting that sometimes, the audience is just really starving for human interaction. Our age group of security executives that are your decision makers tend to be on the older side. So keep that in mind. They're not all young wanting to text at the table with each other instead of having a conversation. They much prefer to put the phones down and actually pick up their forks and knives and look at each other and look each other in the eyes and have a great conversation with each other versus, talking about it through Twitter and Facebook and all that good stuff. I get it. I love those tools as well. But I think sometimes old-fashioned human interaction with a peers is probably going to be your most effective and concentrated because, again, you can target who you want to be there, how they should be there, when they're going to be there. So you have a lot of control over the situation by the fact of the matter of engaging in a face-to-face conversation.
Now, Marci, what you're talking about is a dinner, which I love, because I feel many companies in security today, security vendors, will go to events and kind of check the box, like, yeah, I had some face-to-face interaction. What I've largely found walking the show floors for the past couple of years and asking hard questions and evaluating the effectiveness of some of these events for security vendors is it falls short of the mark. What advice do you have for both the attendees who are listening and the security vendors that are listening to make the most out of events?
Well, absolutely. So a show like RSA now, which has grown into actually two full halls within Moscone, plus all the ancillary venues that surround it, it's really hard if you have an 8x8, booth sitting on the show floor and you were late to the party in terms of, getting your registration and your sponsorship contract signed, or because of the lottery system that you're new to the party. So you haven't, been there since the beginning to get your front row, 20 by 20 super 2-story booth and all that good stuff. What we do is the ISE VIP program. So we really help our sponsors augment their RSA investments by hosting a set of receptions and luncheons that are at the San Francisco hotel. They're invitation only. We're working with the sponsor specifically to direct the kind of audience that they want to have present. So if there's not a match in terms of the company size or the title or things of that nature, we're not going to extend an invitation to be, attending the event. Quite frankly, we don't want tire kickers there, people that are just not going to be fruitful for clients. But we put together a whole series of programs throughout the week. And what we find is it really augments the experience. It brings forth those individuals that are just a little bit somewhat, the executives, quite frankly, can be intimidated and overwhelmed by the floor. People in general, you're seeing a lot of the same marketing messages over and over again. Seeing the booth babes, the debate about that, although that's gotten better in our industry over time. That's a turnoff to a lot of people, especially the few females that we have in this industry. That's not going to really bring them in to your booth and be inviting. But it really allows for an augmentation, a coordination of how you're going to leverage your investment in your time and who you're going to connect with. And it also really can augment your meeting planning. If you are set up in a suite, you're going to have some insight of who is going to be there at the event so that you can have your sales team really have some preset meetings, which, again, the dance cards fill up very quickly. And, sometimes the security executives only have a few minutes or a little bit of limited amount of time to even walk the entire show floor. So you've got to be proactive on how you approach it versus kind of like the old school of going to the shopping mall versus like the Amazon.
Yeah, and it's a great point, Marci. As an attendee, whether I've been working for a company in search for solutions or if I'm more of my analyst role today, when I walk a show floor, there's some frustration there because when I go up to the booth, I have to sometimes go through 2 or 3 different people to get to the person that I really want to talk to that has the information that I really want to talk about. And, like with me, like you can skip the marketing fluff, right? I don't want to talk all technical, but I want to address what problems you're solving, why you solve them better, an assessment of the market, and then, maybe have a technical demo. I find the product managers are a great set of folks to talk to for me. If I could have an event that I get invited to or opt into where you say, hey, this vendor XYZ is going to be here and we're going to bring in the right people, that's a great, that's essentially what it sounds like what you're doing, Marci, right? Is connecting the right people from both sides of the fence, which I think is great. Is that something that you're doing, and what are some of the benefits you've seen?
Absolutely. So what we're doing is really through all of our programs, and even the ones that I mentioned out at RSA, are accelerating the sales pipeline. What we have seen is measurable results. So we've seen the doors getting open because of the thorough nature of what we're understanding, who the target is of our customer, right? Who their customer ideally should be. So we're bringing forth a highly qualified audience, and that is most likely interested in what you possibly, what you do, because they're coming to a themed event that aligns with what you do. So we're not hiding the fact that, you do something else or whatnot. That's fully out there. And it's an opportunity to open the door for a conversation. No obligations to buy because, again, it doesn't work that way. It's not a transaction. There's plenty of commoditized technology in our space, but if you're looking at that real newer, that long-term solution, it is going to be a relationship sale. But we can accelerate and have seen the results where we're getting meeting requests at the time of the conclusion of the dinner, the ISE private dinner, or the reception or the ISE program. It's right there on the spot. The security executive is going and raising their hand and saying, I would like to meet with you, company XYZ, in 1 to 2 months. And we're seeing a fast forward of, I had even a dinner last year where they asked for a proof of concept. The host did at the end of the dinner. They were so impressed with what, the conversation was about and what potentially they could do. They asked for, a proof of concept to take place. So that fast tracked the whole thing.
I find it's very difficult to get to that point if you're fielding a call from a salesperson, looking at a targeted marketing email, visiting the general event booth or attending a webinar or visiting the website of the company. All of those things that we do, and it breeds frustration, which is one of the reasons why we created the show, is so we can bring that level of information to help the security community. So our goals are in alignment there, and
Absolutely.
that's really cool. That's really cool. So tell me a little more about the RSA Breakfast that you host. So you
Sure.
bring CISOs in to talk about like what's working for them, and then you bring marketing folks in from vendors. Like, how does that all work out?
Yeah, actually, I've already secured a couple of folks to be on our panel already. For example, Joe Bennett, who's the CISO for Hertz. I have Caleb Sema with Capital One. And I'm really excited about, those individuals sharing their knowledge. I've got more to announce because there's more invitations that are certainly out there. But I bring forth sales and marketing executives and some CEOs from the emerging companies that really want to understand how to sell and market to the Chief Information Security Officer and the like. Oh, and also Pete Cronus from Turner. Sorry, I didn't not mean to not mention you, Pete. But again, there are sales and marketing folks from the big companies, the emerging companies. And for us, it is our primary business development opportunity where we want to show you as sales and marketing executives how to do business with security executives, and hopefully through the own stories of the security executives that I have as speakers who have been very, very involved in our programs. They share why they've been involved with our programs and the anecdotes of being involved and what the results have been with different companies that have become sponsors of our programs. Now, there's other aspects that we talk about, certainly like which analyst companies, is that relevant? Does that help them in the decision-making process? What media companies does that help? What kinds of shows or other events that they might participate in and why. So we talk about a whole host of things, sales tactics, like we talked about earlier in this interview, like don't call the CEO kind of thing. But we talk about the whole gamut. It's about an hour and 10 minutes of content, and the room is packed every single year. We sell out. We have standing room only because it is probably the only time in the entire year in our industry where you're actually going to talk and hear from the horse's mouth on what works and what doesn't work. And if a sales and marketing person was willing to get up for breakfast on the Wednesday of RSA week, I should say, they're going to really be rewarded with some great tips and techniques.
I think Marci and I identified as one of the few places where sales and marketing people can go and gain knowledge about how to sell and market to the security community and the security industry and security executives, which I applaud. I think, certainly won't be the last time we speak with Marci, because and I've professed this on various calls recently. I don't know if I've said it on a show, but I want to speak with security vendors, both in analyst capacity or just talking with them about how we might be able to help each other. And on the other side of the phone, I want to hear them saying all the right things and really getting it when it comes to how to sell and market to security. And events like this certainly help accomplish that, which is great.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to help any way I can.
Matt, more questions for Marci?
No, I've worked with her in the past when we were at Tenable, so I know the program she does. She does a fantastic job. I'm just trying to figure out how I can engage a little more in the network as we move forward. But yeah, her programs are great.
Well, thank you very much, and it's always been a pleasure working with you. So,
Marci, if I'm assuming the RSA Breakfast this year is probably pretty close to sold out. Like how does
we're opening the registration center this week. So we can share the website. If you go to TEN-Inc.com, you can find the link there and go to the registration page for the Sales and Marketing Breakfast.
There you go. Marci, thank you very much for appearing on Enterprise Security Weekly. It was wonderful having you.
My pleasure. Oh, it was such a great honor to be with you all today. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And with that, we will take a short break, come back, talk about the enterprise security news. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.